Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
People who live in Darrell Issa's congressional district say it's been more than 2,000 days since he's held a town hall. Thanks for joining us. I'm John Carroll in for Maya Trabulsi. Today, they wanted to confront him at a McDonald's in San Marcos, where he was expected to make an appearance. KPBS North County reporter Tanya Thorne says it didn't happen.
About 100 protesters rallied outside of a McDonald's in San Marcos, hoping to get the attention of Republican Congressman Darrell Issa. He was expected to be serving freedom fries during lunchtime, but that appearance was canceled.
We're going to be serving fries. It was like one of the representatives.
That's canceled. I don't believe he's showing up.
Protesters weren't surprised. Issa's constituents are concerned about Medicaid coverage, Social Security, DOJ data breaches, and the lack of due process. Chris Kasarek works with children and adults with developmental and intellectual disabilities at the Arc of San Diego in North County.
You get funding through Medicaid, through a Medicaid waiver, and if we lose that, programs can close. These guys don't have places to go out in the community with staff that can help them learn how to be safe in the community and just be a normal person like they are. Just like us, they're all the same.
Kasarek was looking forward to asking Issa some questions.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to talk to him, but like our signs say, he's a chicken. He did not show up.
What would you want to ask him?
Why, first of all, have you not talked to anybody for over 2,000 days? And what was your excuse for canceling coming here? And why is it you can't support the people of San Diego? Give us an answer.
We reached out to Darrell Issa's office to ask about the cancellation of Thursday's visit, but did not hear back. Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
Advocates for immigrants are again urging the San Diego County Sheriff's Office to limit its cooperation with federal immigration enforcement agencies. KPBS reporter Gustavo Solis says advocates point to the Trump administration's harsh enforcement tactics.
Last December, the County Board of Supervisors passed a sanctuary policy that prohibits the San Diego Sheriff's Office from transferring anyone in their custody to federal immigration agents without a warrant. Sheriff Kelly Martinez has refused to follow that policy. Current state law allows for transfers of immigrants without legal status who have been convicted of certain crimes, even if there is no federal warrant. But Martinez is now facing pressure to reconsider her stance in light of the Trump administration's harsh immigration enforcement tactics.
When we passed the policy in December of last year, we weren't even at the point where we are now, right? Nationally, it's every day. We hear a different story in the news. We're around immigration.
That's County Supervisor Monica Montgomery Stepp, speaking at an annual forum on Tuesday. Advocates at that forum urged Martinez to follow the policy. Here is Erin Surumoto Grassi, Associate Director of Alliance San Diego.
The sheriff's refusal to comply with Board Policy L2 threatens to destroy this trust. You cannot build trust with community members when they are afraid that contact with your officers will result in deportation.
Martinez said all 30 people transferred into federal custody either had criminal convictions or federal warrants. And transferring people in jails keeps Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents out of residential communities.
It protects our communities when ICE is picking someone up in the jail that they're going to go look for it anyway. It protects our community members from having collateral damage of having mothers, daughters, sons, children picked up as well.
In response to questions at the forum, the sheriff said she does not plan to change her position. Gustavo Solis, KPBS News.
This week, EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin toured the South Bay for an up-close look at the cross-border sewage crisis. Today, we got a look at his visit from Mexico's perspective. Both the U.S. and Mexican governments say the visit was productive. They're vowing to accelerate a plan to solve the crisis. However, several South Bay residents told our media partner KGTV they don't think Tuesday's visit will bring change.
I don't know that anybody's ever really held them accountable. So if they do, what's going to be the repercussions if they don't do anything?
We've had so many people just come and interview and talk and evaluate, and then they go back to Washington and nothing gets done.
The Mexican Secretary of the Environment and Natural Resources says a project to redirect wastewater from 2 plants to a dam, avoiding discharge into the Tijuana River, should be complete by 2027.
It will turn cooler out there this weekend, and some of you will even experience a little bit of some patchy drizzle or a brief shower or two. In fact, there are even wind advisories that will be in effect beginning Friday afternoon for far eastern parts of San Diego County. Overnight tonight, some clouds return to the coast. That marine layer is getting a little more robust this time of the year, and an unseasonably cool spell spells into the area here for Saturday. Temperatures well below the norm. We'll look at the details in just a bit.
Additional tariffs on some U.S. trading partners could be making a comeback. President Trump says such tariffs could hit some countries within 3 weeks. Laura Aguirre speaks with an economic expert who says this seesaw approach could cost consumers thousands each year.
Most of what you've been seeing is not the direct effect of tariffs affecting markets.
The director of economics at Yale's Budget Lab says what's roiling U.S. markets right now and likely dinging your 401k retirement fund is something much harder to get a handle on.
It's the uncertainty of where tariffs will end up, the fact that businesses and consumers don't know.
Uncertainty can be powerful and costly. The U.S. financial market has shed $6.5 trillion since a record high in February, according to a senior index analyst at S&P Dow Jones Indices. Daily trading sessions tanking or soaring, hinging on every word from the president, like these this afternoon as he hosted the Prime Minister of Norway.
They had a meeting this morning, so I can't tell you. It doesn't matter who they is. We may reveal it later, but they had meetings this morning, and we've been meeting with China.
But deal making without details only fuels costly uncertainty.
We estimate that these tariffs to date will cost the average American family $4,900 a year.
Potentially hard news to digest amid other economic reports out today. The Labor Department's advanced figure for initial unemployment claims hit 222,000 for the week ending April 19th, 6,000 over the previous week's revised level. Existing home sales dropped nearly 6% in March from February, says the National Association of Realtors, the weakest March pace since 2009. And the median cost of those homes rose to over $403,000 last month, a March record, says the NAR. I'm Laura Aguirre for KPBS News.
Project 2025 touts American science dominance, from Ben Franklin's discoveries to the Manhattan Project, but it also claims the mission has gone awry. President Trump agrees and has cut billions in research money. A UC San Diego scientist tells KPBS's Amita Sharma the cuts are altering the very foundation of disease research.
The plan advocates capping federal funding for overhead expenses for university research, claiming the reimbursements, quote, cross-subsidize leftist agendas and DEI. So far, President Trump's executive orders on federal funding have canceled grants at UCSD that fund pandemic, HIV and AIDS research and intimate partner violence. HIV clinical trials have also been paused. At least 50 researchers have been notified their funding has been disrupted. UCSD infectious disease Dr. Davy Smith says the United States biomedical research infrastructure is being changed.
How we fund research, who's reviewing the research, what we can say in our research. I really have to point out this is censorship when you can't talk about certain groups of people or demographics, or how you include or not include various individuals within research components.
Rick Hess is a senior fellow at the conservative think tank, the American Enterprise Institute. He shares Smith's concern, but he says for years, top universities have silenced conservatives and researched topics aligned with liberal biases. Setting extreme policy guidelines during COVID did not help either.
Universities and their lobbying groups have done a terrible job of either reining in the bad behavior or convincing folks on the right that they're addressing or aware of these issues.
But he says the administration's actions now are an overcorrection at risk of throwing out both the baby and the bathwater. Amita Sharma, KPBS News.
Public Matters is a partnership between KPBS, iNewsSource, and Voice of San Diego. You can see more of our stories at kpbs.org/Public Matters. California's Medicaid program, Medi-Cal, covers nearly half of all Latinos in the state. In San Diego County, 44% of Latinos rely on it for doctor's visits, prescription, and emergency care. KPBS health reporter Heidi DeMarco says proposed federal changes could put that coverage at risk.
House Republicans are considering $2.3 trillion in Medicaid cuts as part of a larger deficit reduction plan, including work requirements to qualify. In February, a bill was introduced proposing work requirements for Medicaid eligibility. Adults aged 18 to 65 would need to work or volunteer 20 hours a week in order to qualify. These changes could lead to nearly 2.3 million Californians losing Medi-Cal coverage. That's according to a new study from UCLA's Latino Policy and Politics Institute. More than half are Latino. Researchers say they're working in jobs that don't offer benefits.
Almost 1.4 million Latino Medi-Cal enrollees are in these critical industries, such as hospitality, healthcare, and construction. And these jobs are often like low-wage jobs that, as I mentioned, they don't necessarily come with employer-provided health insurance because these individuals work as independent contractors.
Arturo Vargas Bustamante is one of the authors. He says Latinos in low-wage, unstable jobs without fixed hours can make it harder to consistently meet the 20-hour weekly requirement.
So Medi-Cal is actually the one that comes as insurance of last resource to cover these demographics.
Rick Kronick is a health policy professor at UC San Diego. He says work requirements won't boost employment, but will cause coverage loss, even for those who are working.
The evidence is clear that they result in people losing coverage for administrative kind of process reasons. The real costs of not having insurance, which is that people are sicker and that more people will die. And we might save a teeny bit of money because of that, but it's a very teeny bit.
That's why the Latino Coalition for a Healthy California just launched a bilingual social media campaign.
We started Salvavidas, our social media campaign, because Medi-Cal does just that, Salvavidas. It saves lives. It is such a key part of our safety net in California that it is our duty to protect it.
Ceci Aquino is executive director of the organization. She says the campaign is also about reminding lawmakers that the health of Latino communities is tied to the state's economy.
We're very proud to be the 5th largest economy in the world. That can only happen if our communities are safe and healthy.
The proposed Medi-Cal work requirements are part of a broader push to cut federal Medicaid spending. It's backed by 9 California Republicans, including San Diego's Darrell Issa. Heidi DeMarco, KPBS News.
The Department of Education will restart the collection of federal student loans in default on May 5th. That ends a pandemic-era pause that began roughly 5 years ago. Karen Kafa has more on where borrowers can find information and repayment help.
The Education Department will restart collections on federal student loans in default on May 5th, impacting at least 5 million borrowers.
The student loan portfolio controlled by the federal government is nearly $1.6 trillion, but fewer than 4 out of 10 borrowers are in repayment. This is unsustainable.
The Biden administration resumed repayments on federal student loans in 2023 after a COVID-era pause. But the Education Department hasn't collected on defaulted loans that have gone at least 270 days without payment since March 2020. Sarah Austin, policy analyst for the National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators, says the stops and starts have created some confusion.
With the long pause on payments as well as that on-ramp after the repayment pause, there has just been a lot of borrowers who are not used to the repayment landscape.
The Trump administration will also restart the Treasury Offset Program, which collects debts by garnishing federal and state payments like tax refunds. By this summer, the Education Department said a borrower's wages could be garnished. Austin says borrowers can stay on top of their loans by making sure their loan servicer knows where to get in touch.
Ensure that your contact information is always current and accurate, especially thinking about students who are leaving school. Their address while they're in school may be very different than their address once they graduate or leave school.
In Washington, I'm Karen Kafa.
In a recent episode of KPBS's new arts and culture podcast, The Finest, we meet Shua, a Southeast San Diego artist who has dedicated his life to music. Shua's journey as a musician spans the euphoric highs of signing a record deal as a teenager to the brink of homelessness just a few years later. Now, at 30, Shua remains committed to the transformative power of music.
Yeah, I was writing an EP in 2020. I needed an outlet for a lot of the overwhelming emotions I was experiencing with the news of the killings of several of my brothers and sisters, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. And so I started making stuff in the garage, and I was up until 3 a.m. every night, kind of a mix between yelling at myself, being very frustrated, crying, because of the pain of what I was trying to express. And then my wife came into the garage and I literally just said the first lines of the song to her out loud. Aren't you tired of waking up to the news? Those Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday blues. I said it just like that. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday blues. I mean, that was a pivotal point, I think, in culture as well, where, you know, the thought that, like, whatever bleeds leads. If you weren't hooked by that machine, then you certainly were in that time. And so I was just saying, I'm like, it's exhausting. You can know in a way that leads you to action, but I think most of that was just extremely paralyzing. That history repeats itself. And that's why I was like, I must do something. I'm going to write some songs. And it felt so insignificant. But, you know, my faith kind of gives me opportunities to be in spaces that I probably wouldn't decide to go to. You know, and I'll say, like, I've been able to sing about police brutality in front of people wearing very stylish red hats.
Yeah.
And have those people come up to me, tears in their eyes, and say, I've never been affected by a story like this in this way.
You can hear the rest of Shua's story at kpbs.org/thefinest, or listen wherever you get your podcasts.
We're dealing with a cooler stretch this weekend as a big trough moves across the western U.S. and is becoming windy in the canyons and passes. In fact, there are areas in inland San Diego County into the mountains where there are wind advisories that will begin on Friday afternoon. We'll have a cooler weekend, and a few of you will even experience a little bit of patchy drizzle or a stray shower or two this weekend. It'll be most likely on the west-facing slopes of the mountains, but we can't even rule out a shower or a brief period of drizzle even along the coast coastline. Tonight, mostly cloudy with those low marine layer clouds, 57 for your low. And after a cloudy morning, we'll begin to see some brighter skies into the afternoon. 63 in Ramona, 64 Escondido, and 66 into San Diego. Farther to the east, big split here between the 79-degree warmth into Borrego Springs, but a chilly 46 at Mount Laguna. And this big zone here of low pressure is going to be pivoting across the Golden State on Friday night, Saturday into Sunday morning, with cooler air and some pretty widespread snow into the mountains to our north. We'll be dealing with, again, not as much moisture in far southern California, but up into the Sierra, there will be accumulating snow. And again, Saturday, temperatures 10 to 20 degrees below the historical averages in some parts of California. The departure from the norm may not be as significant for the coast, but it will be cooler than average, and you'll notice it into San Diego as well. Some spotty showers, downpours to the north, and snow in the Sierra as well. So we'll be watching for, again, potential for a little bit of moisture to sneak into our area as well. But you can see beginning Friday afternoon, this becomes much more widespread to the north. Here comes some moisture, a brief passing shower, most likely on the west-facing slopes of the mountains. So for the coast, we'll see some clouds hold on through the next few mornings with a little bit of brightening into the afternoon. 66s through Sunday, then a little warmer into Tuesday as we turn just a little more seasonable. Inland areas, more clouds than sun on Saturday. A little cool for a few days, and then we bounce back up to 70 and eventually 74 into Tuesday. In the mountains, here's where we have the best shot for a couple of showers, especially on Saturday. As the core of this trough moves through the region, we bounce back nicely into the low 60s by Tuesday. And in the deserts, cooler, breezy as well, but back into the 80s to near 90 degrees into Tuesday afternoon. For KPBS, I'm AccuWeather meteorologist Jeff Cornish.
April 30th is UNESCO's International Jazz Day. While San Diego isn't hosting official events this year, just across the border, Tijuana is keeping the spirit of jazz alive with roots deeper than you might think. KPBS video journalist Matthew Bowler takes us there.
Jazz, a uniquely American art form.
Doesn't matter where you're born, or the color of your skin, or how you worship. Through our instruments and songs, musicians of all ages tell stories bursting with passion about every conceivable subject.
That is jazz legend Herbie Hancock at the United Nations on the first International Jazz Day, April 30th, 2012. The now 85-year-old maestro led the charge to create International Jazz Day with the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, or UNESCO. Musicians and fans worldwide have celebrated jazz every April 30th for 13 years. But in our region, you'll have to head south to Tijuana to participate. There are no official International Jazz Day events in San Diego. But that's okay, because Tijuana has its own rhythm and deep connection to jazz.
We can see Herbie Hancock, we can see Wayne Shorter, Tony Williams, and Bill Plummer.
Jazz royalty in Tijuana in 1966. Arturo Arrizon, a self-appointed Tijuana historian, shows off his tome, a book he self-published called Tijuana, 100 años de música. Tijuana's connection to jazz doesn't start there. For that, you have to go back more than a century to the early days of jazz itself. Ferdinand Joseph Lamotte, better known as Jelly Roll Morton, worked in Tijuana from 1917 to 1922, according to Arrizon, at a bar called the Kansas City Bar, where he's thought to have composed his hit, Kansas City Stomp.
Here's Jelly Roll Morton's visa to work in Mexico.
Decades later, another icon found inspiration in Tijuana. Arrizon says world-famous composer and bassist Charles Mingus was going through some hard times and spent a month in the Mexican city. The city inspired him.
And he spent a full month in Tijuana getting drunk. Yeah. I'm telling you, not only, but he listened to the mariachi bands and he listened to the bands in Mike's and other places. And he recorded songs like Isabel at the Table. the mariachis, and the gift, in Spanish, los regalos. And then he says that's the best record he's ever made.
Another Tijuana bassist making waves, Marco Renteria, plays bass in the world-famous rock band Caifanes. But he loves jazz too. Renteria is humbled when anyone calls him a jazz musician.
For me to be able to call myself a jazz player, I have to be able to like live in New York and, you know, like play any standard in any key and any time and any odd meter, you know, that's the level there.
Renteria is playing at the Museo del Taco for International Jazz Day.
Let this be a tribute for the people who dream.
That's Natalia Velasquez, head of the Tijuana Jazz Society. Velasquez says she organized the concerts, jam session, and master classes to pay tribute to the genre and city she loves.
It's such a good and rewarding thing for myself to be able to say I love my job.
Renteria says Tijuana is full of brilliant musicians ready to soak up new music.
The people here is hungry to listen to different music, you know, and they're really respectful. You know, I have a lot of friends here that are really, really talented.
If you can't cross the border but still want to enjoy Jazz Day in Tijuana, the April 26th concert will be live streamed on ojazz.tv. Whether you're in the crowd or watching from home, International Jazz Day is a chance to celebrate music that crosses borders and brings people together. Matthew Bowler, KPBS News.
Joining us, I'm John Carroll. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.